So before we get started, my first question is, do I have your permission to record this interview?
Oh, yes.
Okay, excellent. And ma'am, if you could nod, awesome, great. Can you please say and spell your full name?
My name is John M. Perkins, Johnmperkins.
And your wife's name?
Perkins.
Vera Mae.
Thank
Oh, my wife.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vera Mae. May I call you Vera Mae?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, can you tell me when and where you were born and a little bit about your childhood in New Hebron?
I was born in rural, about 4 miles outside of New Hebron, Mississippi. And I was born there in 1930, June the 16th, 1930. And of course my mother died 7 months later, so I was the last of 6 children. She died, and she died from a disease, they call it pellagra. It was a way they would announce people back in those days was dying from starvation or malnutrition deficiency. And so my mother died of starvation. We were sharecroppers, and they say when she was dying, didn't have medical care available, she was nothing but skin and bone, and of course they was farmers, with no hospitals and places like that. You get sick, you stay puny and get a little puny more, so she was nothing but skin and bone. And she died and I lived. As I have reflected on that through my life, I have drawn a lot of significant from that in meditation, especially since I became a Christian when I was 27 years old, and I have lived my life now 65 or 66 years as a Christian, and I didn't find significant and meaning this poor guy, I'm going to drop out of school somewhere between the 3rd and 5th grade and never go back to school. I'm going to end up with 17 or so honorary doctorate degrees from some of the most sophisticated colleges in the world, but never went back for academic study. But I think what I feel about myself, and I like to talk about it because it's the life of others who become friends. Like the lady, we didn't have a milk cow on the plantation because they want to keep all the land, raise cotton back in those days. And so she died. She would bring, they said, a quart of milk after my mother died. My grandmother took her. My grandmother did not have a milk cow, and she'd been the mother of 19 children. And but somebody saw who did have a milk cow, brought a quart of milk to my home until I become, practical and global and all of that. So in a great sense, I see her giving her life for me. She died and I live. I have reckoned that as some motivation because I think she's gonna ask me what did I do with my life. And she's not going to think about all these 20 or so books and all of that stuff and all these degrees. She's going to be asking, what did I do for other humans like her? And that challenges me. And I got a real person to put it with. This is not pie in the sky. Now, I didn't discover, I knew this somewhat, but I didn't discover a lot of this until I began to write my first book. that became a bestseller. Yeah, so I just say that I think you will find a little bit of what I want to be. I want to live with some sense of gratitude, because as I get near and 90, she's gonna, I know what I would like for her to say when I see her, but I know what she's gonna say probably. What did you do for people like me?
That's beautiful.
What do you do for people like me? And I found that my gratitude has come from not only what I have tried to do, but the people did something significant for me because they brought the milk. So I'm not a self-developed, pull myself up on my own bootstraps. And some people say that. And so God wants us to feel a sense of gratitude with responsibility. And I think that's what's missing in our society. We have put the stuff in front of the humanity, and we have put white and black in front of human dignity. And we're mad about that. We're mad about that. And so I think if we could find some sense of gratitude and give ourselves somewhat to those people who are broken, I think God is going to be pleased with it. That's why I can even feel good when I meet young people like you. Decide to try to do something meaningful with your life, whether you're a doctor of medicine, a doctor of anything, but the idea you want some efficiency within what you're doing in life. And I think that stimulates a sense of joy and responsibility, but I don't think you ever live up to your full sense of looking for meaning. And you know, you're gonna continue to look for meaning at the rest of your life. And I consider Vera Mae now, being with her for 70 years. She was 17, gonna turn 18 3 months after we get married. I'm gonna turn 20, and we 20, yeah, and we're gonna spend these years together. And so that's some of my sense of joy, my sense of fulfillment in life. I guess I'm ready for another question.
Yes, sir. I can help you with that. Before I ask you another question, I'd like to ask Vera Mae where she was born.
I was born 8/16/1933.
August of 16.
Mm-hmm.
8/16/1933.
Yes, ma'am.
About near, we probably was born 5 miles apart, or less.
Really?
Less than 5 miles apart. But we didn't know that until after we were married.
Oh, okay. Now, I'd like to hear more about the rest of your family. You told me you were sharecroppers and that your mother passed away when you were 7 months old, and I believe you were raised by your grandmother.
Yes.
Can you tell me more about your siblings and your other family?
Yeah, I tell you about that. My great-grandmother, I knew her, and she was 15 years old when the Civil War surrendered. They call it surrender because the black people who were slaves was glad when they surrendered, you know, because they're the one that was held captive. So she was, and I got to know her. She lived over 117 years. So I got to know her. And then I don't know how many children she had, quite a few, but my grandmother who raised me, she had been the mother of 19 kids, and 19 young people, and I know 13 of them. I remember 13 of my aunts and uncles, and we were sharecroppers. Sharecroppers was the first step up in the continued exploitation of black folk that was not broken until really probably Brown versus the Board of Education. About that same time is when sharecropping, and soon after that, the voter civil rights movement and the voter rights movement. But the big piece of the civil rights movement was Brown versus Board of Education, because that was the big lie that separate could be equal. I mean, and people bought into that. I mean, God would have to fix that. It's too big a lie. But he's not going to make it right. He's going to use humanity to confess their sin in some kind of way. He ain't going to make that right because there's too much of a blind spot. They got to, both as a nation and as individuals, he do it to us too, as individuals in life. So I grew up that way. I guess my picking cotton, working, I motivated me because we had to work for whatever we get. And I remember working almost a whole day when I was about 12 years old, expecting to get about $1, $1.50 a day's work. But at the end of the day, instead of that person giving me $1, $1.50, he gave me 15 cents. But see, I knew I was being exploited because my grandmother set me up for that. I think there is a sort of a discovery that I made in my own life because we were bootleggers and gamblers. You know what a bootlegger is? They sell anything that is you can't get, but basically stuff that was stolen, and we resell it to somebody else. And of course, bootlegging was also its prohibition. Whiskey, we did all that kind of stuff. And when we was being raised, it was always a house full of us. My grandfather had already died. He had died in the late 20s. And so she was with her. And so she was really a matriotic person. The sheriff came and pretended in our house. We was all children there. It was in the field working on the plantation. And he said he found some whiskey. Well, he had come to the right place. I don't know if he found it or not, but he had come to the right place. And he said, I'm going to take you to jail. And he said, my grandmother said, Sheriff, look at me. She said, if I was a man, I would kick your ass for you even thinking that I'm going to go to jail with you and leave these children. And we was little children. I heard that. I haven't had to suffer from believing that white folk was better than me. That's the big thing that hinders our progress in America. Making us believe, it was serious. Many of us didn't have nothing to do much with it. But I guess that's why my mother was a bootlegger. That's why it was sharecropping in life. Now, what I never believed that white folk was better than me. But back in those days, you didn't believe it. Somehow or other, your people didn't let you get trapped somewhere along the way where you bleed that deeply. That's a gift from God. That's human dignity in life. And that's where we have missed it on the whole civil rights movement and all that. I'm not faulting the civil rights movement. We were doing what we could do. I'm not pitting one thing against the other because all problems are comprehensive and multifaceted. And so you need people in every area of life working in their area of life, you bringing the best they got, and that's where progress is at. So you don't have to ask all these questions. I mean, which most of those questions reaffirm your inferiority. If somebody tell you that you have to get mad in order to recognize that black is beautiful. We have to get mad to say Black Lives Matter. That ought to have been kindergarten. The society around us should have been so, and the nurture of people without telling them they was inferior and creating an inferior community. We're not hearing this kind of talk. We're not hearing the kind of talk that installs like we're doing. We're doing it. We make a attempt at it right now. We're trying to explain that history and how we fell into that. And we explain that how I have to get mad when I said Black Lives Matter. And white folk gonna say, what in the hell are you talking about? We done created a society that we don't believe it. And we don't want you to believe it. Because you're gonna think you're as good as us. That's a sickness. That's a sickness. Are you following me?
Yes, sir.
So when Kenneth Clark and Thurgood Marshall took that doll experience, that was the beginning of our liberation. All these other folk did good stuff. Emmett Till did good stuff when his mother opened the casket. Rosa Parks did good stuff when she affirmed her own dignity by not getting up and go to the bag. Dignity is a big deal. Dignity is a big deal, but it was dangerous for people like me. Now you'll hear the danger as we go along, that people just get careless and that they can believe that about themselves without having to hate somebody else first. I gotta hate somebody else in order for my dignity to be fair. I got the marching for, I know how we marching. I'm not putting it down, I march. You understand? But I think that we're not doing enough, and I think this is what makes what you're doing so important, is that human dignity is going to be the way, and it's going to have to go fast because of the way we have, our society is being formatted today to say, make America white again, and then make all the other people, when they come to America, they are minority and we hate them too. That's dangerous.
Yes, sir.
That's what some of the anger is about. We want white, ain't never been all together. Yeah, it was a majority, but it was a majority in the world. But it got make it so they got demonized. They take a word and got people fighting over those words. But hope maintaining their superiority and maintaining the economic distribution, and they don't distribute it in some kind of equitable way in our society. So we at a dangerous time, dear young lady.
Yes, sir.
You're at a dangerous time. Okay. So I think that's what.
Derek Perkins, my son Derek Perkins, or one other.
I should have known better.
I should have reminded you.
Okay.
Do you need to speak to
I
him?
kill it.
Okay.
I kill it.
All right. Do you want to wipe your face a bit?
Yeah. You think
You're welcome.
you wouldn't have done that? You wouldn't have done that if I didn't. If I wouldn't have told you to.
Well, I'm just trying to do what you asked. So I'd like to ask if Vera Mae's family, were they sharecroppers as well?
No, they were not sharecroppers. You want to answer that, Mama?
No. It wasn't sharecropping. My folk kind of own their own farm.
Oh. They owned their own farm. That's great.
She would have been sort of like in those days. Well, even you make a comparison now, it would have been like she would have been a middle class within that environment.
Owning land, that's a big deal.
In society. So I was across the track, but I got her because her dignity was already firm in life. She went to pick up some pecan on a white man's place, and the tree was out almost in the woods. The house was old, and she picked up some pecan, and the man came along and took her pecan that she had picked. The white man who owned the land, and so she understood, which was a slogan now. It was probably developed since then. They got a slogan for black people, for prosperity. This is what it reads: give people a fish and they'll eat for a day. Teach them how to fish and they'll eat for life. That's a lie. Whoever owns the pond determines who eats fish. When that man took her pecan, she said, I'm gonna own the pecan tree. I'm gonna own, you get that here?
Yeah.
How the inspiration comes. And that's creative teaching, because it's gotta have a little longing spot in you. Somebody else has to say it for you.
What my phone?
Hello.
Hello.
If I can find it.
I got it.
Thank you.
What my phone?
That door.
She's gonna get it.
Was
Let's wait for her.
is your phone ringing or
Yeah.
is it the door ringing?
No, it was the phone. She's on the phone now.
Okay. Are we getting mixed up here?
We'll just wait for her to finish with the phone call.
Which prescription?
It's okay. Alright, I think we can continue now. It's just a little loud. But you were saying that Vera Mae's family owned their own farm, and she learned as a young girl the importance of ownership.
And then they had started a school in her, like they had in many of those schools, and you had to walk along with the school. Her mother sent her to, first she had to ride a bus along with the school, because after the time she came along, but they also, she lived in a boarding school, and so she got a high school education. That's what I mean, back in those days. And then of course we got married, and with that, those two incentives met, and that we had already broke. We're gonna do it later, but we had broke the kind of lies about poverty and about human dignity. We had learned about that before the economists had to come along to help us for it. And economists, the educator had to come along and say that you got to go to college now. I have, because of my growing up like I did, I have tried to monitor and correct the idea to say, if you don't get a college education, you're not gonna be nothing. That's crazy. You're something before you get a college education. You're something after you get a college education.
Oh, my phone.
It's in the office. You need it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, what we do in our conversation, we always put a negatives, and usually that negative be against us, and we accept that false narrative that he made.
You don't want to answer your phone
The-
I'm not doing the interview.
What?
You don't want to answer your phone during your interview.
But I didn't, who was that?
That was Walgreens.
Kill it. You kill it.
Well, she won't be able to hear anything if I turn
I'm
it
saying
off.
if you kill it, we doing an interview.
Right.
Yeah, if we could just mute it, maybe.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay. So you want me to just mute it, Grandma?
What?
Mute it so it won't ring.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Perfect. I'd like to ask you about, you mentioned earlier being a dropout, that you stopped school somewhere between 3rd and 5th grade. And I was curious about why you used the word dropout. Because I assume...
Because we went to school, yes. This is the way I think of it. I know what dropout is. But we went to school then, the poor people who had did not have their own land, they had to work for the white man on the farm when you got to be 8 or 9 years old. And if you were a sharecropper, you would have to be out there with your uncles and things doing what the white folks had to do. And so and even in those rural schools, most of them didn't go no farther than the 8th grade, and some of them didn't go to the 8th grade. That's why she ended up, going to away from school, away from the country, so she could go to where at least was a high school. And I'm sure they had a primary school there too, but they went from 1 to 8 at least in the community. Am I making sense? So when I say drop out, we stop in order to pick cotton or to pull corn or to do something within the community. And so the poor sharecropper had to do what the white man said. And the kids who went to college was people who, parents who had some land. That's what somebody came along with her grandmother and told them, y'all is never going to get out of slavery unless y'all buy some land. Because that was a big word. Black folk bought a lot of land. Now we lost our land now. You know, it didn't fall out of hand. But that was the foundation. And eventually, Sears Roebuck then came up with, when they became the Pyramid Company, they discovered, because of Mary Cloud Bethune, developed that rural education, and that was the beginning of building schools for blacks in Mississippi. The school, he's the one who set off, and he's the one who gave the money actually to the county to help build school buildings for rural people. And he would give you, if the people would say they would build a house, they came through the county system. If they would build, a black could build a building, they could do that kind of carnal work. He would give them enough money for them to build a 2-room, a 3-room schoolhouse. And most of them was called Rosenwald in the school. That was the history of education in the South. And you can follow that all the way through college. Rosa Bethune, she developed the first girls' college because the head of Sears told her that she could have more students if he gave us some money. And she asked him to be the chairman of her board. That was the end of that. Yeah. That was the end of that. That was the beginning of college. Made him responsible. So we got some rich, like I said, we got some rich history, but how do we tell it to the present people? How do we tell it? I remember Yeah. It was Andrew, Andrew Young. Andrew Young was speaking at someplace. I went to speak here in Jackson. And he said, I went to Morehouse to speak. Morehouse is a good school. I like Morehouse, okay, but listen, might come off bad, but I'm gonna tell you the reality. So you have to learn how to understand that Morehouse, where Martin Luther King went, and we're talking now about 30 years ago. Andrew Young was given Andrew Young was given a lecture, and in fact, I was on the stage. I was getting some kind of honor at that he was giving that lecture, and Morehouse is where Martin Luther King went to school, but two boys who enrolled in Morehouse was students. And when Benjamin Mays or somebody was talking about Martin Luther King, this is about 30 years ago, somebody said, one of the Morehouse students said, they keep on talking about that person, Martin Luther King. What did he do? And he was at the school he graduated from. They keep talking about that dude. What did that dude do? So that I don't know how to say it. I think projects like you guys are doing, how do you visualize that? How do you make that? I said that to Comcast when I did some stuff with them, and they was putting it on international web, during the civil rights, during the celebration of the 50th anniversary. Mm-hmm. And it was so thorough, like you were doing it here. We did it pretty thorough. And I said to the vice president of communication, I said, can I get a copy of that? He said, we're gonna put it in the cloud, and it's gonna be there forever. You're gonna put this in the cloud.
Well, eventually, yeah.
Yeah, and it'll be there forever.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Vera Mae, do you remember the name of the school you went to?
Yeah. What I want to know, I went to Mendenhall High School.
Mendenhall High School?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
What was the Pinola school you went to?
New Hill.
I know, but what grade did it go to when you was going there, if you would have stayed on there?
I think it was 12th grade.
It went to the 12th grade?
Mm-hmm.
And you was there primarily to have a dormitory room?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What school was that?
They call it New Hymn.
New Hem?
New Hymn. Spell it for me. New
H-Y-M.
And that's the high school?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's where she first lived in down there. And then she went to,
Mendenhall.
what grade was you when you went to Mendenhall?
9th.
9th grade. You could have had 9th down in New Hampshire, could you? But you went there because they had dormitory. And you went there because you was a good student, wasn't you? Yeah. She ended up teaching while she was going to school. And back in those days, many of the teachers in the school where I had gone had just graduated from high school. And Yeah, I lived to see, being 91 years old, I lived to see from the real poverty, because we got a setback with the Depression, and I was born in the beginning of the Depression. The Depression started in 27, and I was born in 30, and the Depression didn't begin to lift until 39 with the war in Europe, and agriculture and electrical improvement in this country, and they put, and then what they call WPA, they put the poor men. This is the first time black men learn how to drive tractors and those kind of things. All over white folks' job. So that was a big lift, and that was the beginning, you know, of the standard of living. And then in the North, of course, Henry Ford and others forced $1 an hour wages, and then you got a flood of people leaving out of Mississippi. Mm-hmm. And Henry Ford was doing that because he wanted them to buy his cars as well as put them on the assembly line. You understand? So the North, and that was then the big migration. Mm-hmm. That was a big and that's what created what Martin Luther King called the Northern Ghetto. Our mobility was from the rural poverty to the northern limited ghetto of the North. And that we thought that we was achieving because you didn't have to get no high school education to get on Henry Ford's assembly line.
Right.
You see.
Yeah. I'm curious, you mentioned the war in Europe and migration, and I know that you left Mississippi for California when you were young.
Yeah, I left after my brother went to the war, and he came back to live at home, and he probably was going to stay in the rural. Probably he'd end up in the North, most people did, but fortunately he came back, and less than a year after he was back, he was killed by white at a theater. He and his girlfriend, who was supposed to be joy for time, coming out of service, she'd been away, and girls and boys were 20 and 21, 22, 23, getting married, and it was a joy for time. And they had built a movie theater in the city while he was gone in the service, and so they went to the movie, and the sheriff, they had to stand in line in an alley to go upstairs to get the best seat from the white folk, but the white folk didn't realize them because they didn't want them down there with them. So we got the best seat up at the top. Well, that he and the policemen, when black people was having fun, and especially young people who've just got a service and that thing, talking loud, and the police would people talk too loud, he would come along and hit them on the head, and he hit my brother on the head, and he just out of the military, and probably going to draft a gun, but the guy shot him 2 times, and he died. Well, after he died, I'm now 15 years old, and our folks just sort of decided it was time for me to get away, because I could go the same way, being a school dropout in town, and I needed something to do, and so I went to California, and that became my liberation, going to California and seeing another way, and seeing a new people, and with a strong workaholic idea, and so I got involved at a plant where they were mechanizing assembly line in most production. So I came along after World War II. They were assembly line, and I helped to put in an underground assembly table. That everything was on table, on systems, and when they started building the system, I was one of the first persons they hired to build the system. It took about a year to build the system, and so I knew more about the system, and so I became one of the leaders of the system, and then of course I stayed there until I went in and drafted into the Korean War. And then when and then it's that time, during that time I met Vera Mae, and I was afraid somebody else was gonna get her if I went overseas. So I got her before I went overseas.
How did you two meet?
I went back home with the intention of looking for me a wife. See? And when I got back there, I went to the church. That's where you go. That's where girls gather at. They had a little honky-tonk, but girls didn't go to a honky-tonk. You had to be a woman to go to a honky-tonk. And so it wasn't nothing much for girls to do in rural area. And she was a religious girl. She couldn't even go to the movie. Did you ever go to the movie downtown? Yeah. So it was so limited. And so I went to the church, and my buddy and I I was looking for a wife, and usually other guys my buddy's age, they would have been looking for a wife too. You know, we were the same age, and so when they get through in the church, back in those days, the men, when they get ready to take the offering, the men would all walk around the table and pay their offering and go back to the seat. I mean, go outside and smoke. Girls, when they go around and take the offering, is at the end of the service, and then they all come out. And so we went to the front of the church so we could see all the girls. And when Vera Mae appeared, and this is a fact, I had never seen a black woman that was as beautiful as that girl. Lord have mercy. And she sort of knew she was dressed up. She knew she was dressed up at this revival. And boy, that was the beginning of what it didn't took, that have an end. That was the beginning of finding her and loving her, witnessed the service, didn't know how to stop doing what I was doing in the service when I came back. And she left me. But she came back. She came back. And so my job now is to take care of her. And she gave me 8 children. And my job is to be here for her. We have turned this house sort of into our own hostage because of this virus 19, and because of our age, and because she's down, it costs much more money to keep her at home than it would actually go into some kind of, but she wouldn't live there, particularly during this virus. She has spent some time in her having a stroke. She spent some weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks away from home. But we and the doctors figured out this was the best place for us to do it. And I had a major operation in cancer. And so I'm going through that. And so we're staying here together. have great people working with us here. So you can see a little of my gratitude, can't you? I'm gratitude for my long life. I'm grateful for the development project I've been involved in, and now I'm thankful that my books are bestsellers. So I'm so grateful, and I admire people like you guys. We established a scholarship fund over Jackson State. You know about that? You know about I tell you about it?
I've heard you mention it in one of your books.
Yeah. We got a scholarship program with that. Want to see it develop, but I'm not. This is not. It's the best thing for some things, but this is not the most vibrant time, especially for old people, like for anybody. So you're sort of fortunate that you got a job in which you can continue your pursuit at this particular time, because it's getting very.
It's lunchtime for Mom, right? Did she have lunch?
She done had lunch.
Oh, she did?
No, yeah. Well, I've been so fortunate to, that piece got great coverage.
Right. It was first printed in the newspaper, right?
Yeah, it ran in the newspaper for 2 weeks, and it ran prior to the opening of the Sovereignty Commission report. That was the most critical report, because the Sovereignty Commission was like a Hitler Gestapo that guided people's lives, and anybody who didn't agree with them, they oversee them and try to get them out of Mississippi or get them killed, or locked in jail. And when it was financed by the state of Mississippi, and when the first legislators of black came in, their goal was to repeal that law, because the legislature itself, which was white, had said that this could not be open until so many years. I don't know, it was 50 years, 100 years, or what it was after probably the death of everybody that was involved in it. They come up with some kind of law to fix it, because they knew that a society knew what they were doing, but the legislators wouldn't give up. The blacks wouldn't give up until they finally got in the government. I think they brought some kind of suit against it. So somehow or another, it ended up they had to set a time when they had to reveal that. And they didn't know what life was going to be like.
Yeah.
And so they had to come up with a story that shined some light both on the evil, but also something that people could read, a comparison. And so my story had already been written, but they wanted to write it from a Mississippi point of view. And so Clarence Ledger decided they were going to, by this time Clarence Ledger done chained hands, because they took almost like the radio television station and the Clarence Ledger paper. They were the wicked ones. And so finally they got out of business, the government put them out of business. They sold their business. They still were the richest people in town. And so they knew about Tommy Tarrant, and they knew my story, because I I wrote my story already in the Justice Rhode Island.
Oh, yes.
And it had become a,
For the frame, do you want him to scoot over a little bit?
I can actually
Oh.
move the camera.
Okay.
I was just gonna let him finish. Do you mind if I move the camera?
yeah,
Okay.
you might as well. See, we'll talk about it later.
And you can wipe your mouth a little bit.
I'm glad I told you. Yeah.
There we go.
That's quite a story. I read it from time to time. And I got a new edition of Let Justice Roll Down for the younger generation. It's just not coming out.
Okay.
It's a big seller.
Oh, yeah?
It's a big seller. And my book, my manifesto, my last work is 3 books I put together, and I'm calling those my manifesto.
Right.
And they're gonna come out in September. We're all ready for that. That's been my last work. I mean, for the last 7 years I've been working on it. And so I feel good in doing this and retelling the story as a reflection. My girls, I think, misunderstood that Mama is not quite well enough to get what, because she's such a good storyteller. I mean, she's such a great storyteller too, but her stroke and all that, and her attention, she's been through a lot. But my girls, they love their mama so much, and they like the fact that I love her so much, and she loved me so much, and she has been my absolute partner in all of my work. So that's what makes it. And even as she got older, they don't see her mother quite like nobody else see her.
Yes.
They still see her with
I understand.
Yeah, and so I don't want to push it against them. I really wanted to say it'd be better for us to hold a conversation, because I probably see her, I know I do, because I see her out of
Is it okay if she turns her TV on?
her love and her consistent with
I'd like to hear more about how you came to Christ. I think I read that it was your son.
Yeah, I tell you that story. I put that in a capsule. Going to California was a whole new idea. My loneliness, and I contributed to. I served on several president, think tanks, and task force, and that's the way many of the past presidents have got their new creative information through volunteer, successful, academic, business community, scientists that relates to world and human progress. They set up a task force and to see whether this is something for the government, it's something for institutions and others, and should the government be involved in it. And Reagan was strong on that because he didn't pretend to know everything. He was a popular president, intelligent, but hadn't been a politician. In fact, he'd been a union person for the Union Guild. That was the deal. And so I served on 2 of his task force. One of it was on is hunger a sickness, or is it how it coming back and why people are hungry? And people know the hunger is here, and how the government shouldn't the government get involved in it because it's too big a problem. And so they created this task force. That was the first one I served on. I served on it. But before that, I had served as a speaker before Senator McGovern task force on nutrition. That was the first one I served on that. And what they do is find creative thinkers who have been involved in the thoughtfulness of the world, who are sort of scientists. And what happened to me when I became a Christian, I go to that, I come back to that and tell you how I became a Christian. I developed a way of thinking now. When you say that, that's not a religion, was said another way. God saved me, He filled me with the Holy Spirit, He told me to do this and this is what I done. Now, that's religious talking. What people don't take that as scientific. What they take is something that you can explain to them and that you can begin to apply your life to a way of solving problems. And that's what happened to me when I became a Christian. I grew up so poor. I had already done this nutrition thing somewhere along the line there. And that milk that person gave me, I helped to develop this program they call WIC. You know about the WIC program?
Yes, women, infants, and children.
That program came out of the study that Senator McGovern did. It was such a high-profile deal. He got a president nomination. He didn't get for 5 states, but he got but the program was so famous. And I spoke before that committee, and I told the story that I told you today. And I told, at this point, I'm working on this. I'm working on doing something about nutrition, and they hear about me, and they asked me to come to Washington and spend some days there and testify before the committee. And I told the story I told you before the committee, and then that became a way of thinking, and it became a way of, when I became a Christian, I think different, not better, from most preachers. I teach and preach. I never call myself a preacher. I call myself a Bible teacher. That's unique. That's unique that a person reach my sort of influence place and is a Bible teacher, not a preacher. I'm not Jesse Jackson. I'm not Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton is, and both of those I admire, so I'm not talking against them when I say it. But I think as a Christian, and I accept the science, I accept the miracles. You know, that's what helps us scientifically too, when we know we can't do it, but God done it anyway. It got done in life. So I began to think what we call now, I give you, you ought to buy a copy or 3 copies of my manifesto.
Yes.
You can have it for $30.
Oh.
3 copies. It is my manifesto in turn, I've been involved in 25 or 30 other major book projects. One in Australia, one in other places, and my books have been published in many of the countries around the world. Yeah, I'm low profile in terms of the big public. I'm not but of the thoughtful academic seminaries and the colleges, they see my thoughtfulness is sort of unique too, and I'm just a third grade dropout. But what I'm explaining here is that nutrition that my mother got to save me while I was still being born, and the nutrition that I got after that saved my thoughtfulness. And that's scientific. I know the guy who discovered, he testified before the committee. I'm trying to think, he's a nutritionist. He did most of the study that went before the Head Start program. And he had a project here in Mississippi. He was a Harvard pediatrician and nutrition. And he came to poverty from the fact that poverty was scientific as well as it was deprivation, that people did not have enough nutrition. The hair turned, your hair turned red, and so much if you don't learn it at a certain time, and if you don't get the kind of milk you need to expand your brain, it sort of die. And all that, I'm saying it in layman words. And so I experienced some of that. Well, let me tell you the story. Let's put it in question. When I became a Christian. Mm-hmm. Now, this thoughtfulness comes after I'm a Christian. You need to know that. But I makes it scientific, so I don't get up in there before the nutrition committee and say, God struck me this and God told me this. You won't hear me saying, God told me this. People don't listen to that. Religious people listen to it. But if somebody else come along and say it a different way, and they'll believe that too. It might not be scientific.
How you say something matters for the audience. Sometimes you have to use certain words to appeal to certain people.
Oh, yeah. I think I learned how to teach. Let me tell you about my Christian experience.
Yes.
I went to California, got married, started my family, and she got pregnant and left me because I wasn't doing right. She came back when the son was 6 months, I think, or something like that. Mm-hmm. And of course, when I saw him and all that, and her, and by this time my wickedness is calming down, and I fell in love with her again, and with him, and it's been a love affair ever since. Well, I'm still this ambitious guy, even though I'm not doing right. I bought my own house and all that kind of stuff, and when she got back, her mother came to visit, her grandmother came to visit her. This is when I think I really began to think about God. I thought about it when I got out of service. I began to think about it when she left me. It brought me, I wanted to be successful. I wanted to be rich. That was my ambition. And I got on a track. You know, I tell you about my working. I got on a track that I could have probably got there. And so I she came back to me. I began to seek the Lord in my own way, and people began to see me and begin to talk to me about it, and then my Spencer now is now 3 years old. Are you there? Can you hear me? Did I move away from?
You just moved a little bit, but I'm gonna move this just a little, and you keep talking. Go ahead.
I'm out of the service now. I'm ambitious, on my way to make my fortune, I think. And learning, and we got into my wife would go to church from time to time because she was a Christian, but she didn't go as regular. But when Spencer got up, they started some good news clubs in the community, whites and blacks together. Really what was happening, blacks was expanding and moving into the white, used to be a part of town. The churches was there. Before they run, they try to reach anybody who was there, black or white, even in California. And so they started these good news clubs and talked about, and my wife helped get that started. And Spencer went to it at about 3 years old. And I began to see how he developed. And so and then he wanted to go to Sunday school. Well, she sent him to Sunday school, and she, I like the fact she dressed him up and sent him to Sunday school. She'd go sometime. And then this good news club started in the community. White and blacks working together for the children. And Spencer went to it. And I began to involve my kid, in teaching him how to read, what I could read, and all that. And I was impressed with my own son's ability to learn. I think everybody's like that. I don't think anybody's unimpressed with that, their own son. And he would go to Sunday school, and I began to watch his behavior, though. There was a behavior there that was not rural, it was not country, it was, and kids are intelligent. Who is God? Well, who made God? Where did he come from? That's creative. I mean, you can't get no better than that. Grown folk wouldn't say that. Grown folk wouldn't say that. So I'm a child, and so he came. I said to him, "What do you learn in your Bible class today?" And he said, "We sang a song." And what is that song? God loves the little children. All the children of the world, red, brown and yellow, black and white, they're all precious in his sight. God loved the little children of the world. First time I ever heard it. See, it tells you something about my mind. It tells me something about the way I think. And I think I began to think like that when my mother said to the sheriff that I wasn't inferior. When my mother said to the sheriff, I could say to a white boy, "Come out and play with me." Sometimes he gonna win, sometimes I'm gonna win. The victory of winning, the agony of defeat. You need all of that in life. And we don't know how to get that. Children get it through playing. They get through climbing the rope. Who can climb it the fastest? Who can do this? And playing sport. And so when he said that, I never heard that. God love me. That's powerful. God loved me. And I went to a bookstore, make it quick. I watched people in the community. I was watching religious people. I'd go to church from time to time, a black religion, and I would go to Sanctified, they dance and others, and the preacher would preach. I didn't know what he was talking about. When he really get to his message, I didn't know what he was talking about, in life. Sometimes I'd heard words said over and over, but I didn't look for I wasn't looking for an emotional shot. I was looking for a realistic, put 1 and 2 and 3 together, and so I went to the bookstore. Well, the Jehovah's Witnesses started stopping. I started talking to them, and then I started going to other religious groups, listening to them, and some made sense, some didn't. Some made sense, some didn't. And you need to join the church. Why? And I thought they wanted my money. I was that crazy. Because that's what they ask for all the time. They want you tied. Well, why should I be tied to them? I don't, where does this money go? Bring it into the storehouse. I don't see no storehouse here. So we can have a meeting in the house. Whose house? And people preaching that, I'm listening to it. So Jehovah's Witness was the people. They would come to my house and want to teach, and I would sit there and listen to them, and I listened to them. They made some sense, and I listened some more. It made some sense. And I went to a Bible bookstore. Vera Mae's friend told me about a Bible bookstore. I didn't know there was no such thing as a Bible bookstore. And because the Bibles in my town, they gave them away, furniture stores and different places. Gave you the Bible if you come in there. You get them because they was getting them for 50 cents a piece. As promotion, and that kind of stuff. And so whatever I went to buy, I said, I want to be a Bible teacher. Now I'm thinking. I said, I want to be a Bible teacher. And because the Jehovah's Witness had a Bible. And they're the one who went into the community and sit down with the people in the community, trying to get enlighten them. I like that. And so I went and asked this lady, said, I want to buy a Bible. I want to be a Bible teacher. And she said, yes. She was glad. I'm black. She was white, but she had been a missionary for 19 years in Brazil. Now, Brazil, in the mainstream of Brazil, race don't make it different. Black, white don't make it. Now, there is where the shipwrecks and things, and where black comes, but the Portuguese were the last of the slave owners. So Brazil is a different nation as it relates to race. She had been there, and she said to me, she said, yeah. I said, I want to be a Bible teacher. She said, that's good. The Bible is about one person. She said, but it's in 66, I think, or so books. And it's about those people who work with that one person to achieve the goal in life, somewhat, that person has. That was the first thing I heard about, which is after what she was saying, that God has incarnated himself in Jesus Christ so he could be made known to the world. That's what I'm going to learn later. And so I went to reading the Bible, and I read until I got to the 12th chapter of Genesis. And that's where the Bible began, as an understandable book. The rest of it is more scientific and miracle stuff. Wonderful. But when it gets there, it turns to a person. And God had said, get thee out from among your people. This is before Moses. And so I was done, and then I came to a Bible verse, and I make it quick, that spoke the truth that is when I began the Bible. Spoke the truth. And it's what my manifesto is. And my manifesto is a reflection of the 25 or 30 books that I've written on what it means to be a Christian in those. And then the first part of my life, I spent learning that, and now I've got it as a manifesto of life. I think you will get that if you read those 3 books, you'll get that story. And so I tell Bible stories, and I illustrate it by other Bible stories. And I'm not gonna go into all that. And then I think through my sermons before I teach them. I think through. I get Zoomers, the people on the Ford Foundations, and the people who are Christians in very top places in society who really know Christ. They are scientists, they are business people, they are trying to put their faith as it relates to God and the Bible to work. And so I call that now, you know it, but I just say it, a manifesto is what did you set out in life to do? What did you want to be? Well, most of us set out in life to be a revolutionary person. Most of us want to do something to bring us deep meaning. And a manifesto is somebody to sit down and write that out and think that through and plan it for society. A Shula manifesto is revolutionary people when they read their manifesto, because they talked about how they want to change the world. Well, I talked about when I realized that God said, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every person. I found that knowing that God was the main task of the Bible, and then to share it with others, and then to love that person, love God, and to love that person like you love God. And then I learned, of course, is love is the summa of human thought. Have you ever heard that before?
No.
Love is the greatest. Love ends up being the greatest thought that a human being could think. And when you learn how love works, it's even incarnational with us. I don't talk to single women about sex. You know, we have a thing like this. I don't know whether you're single or married.
No, I'm saying.
You married?
No.
No, it's but life is what gets life. And the motivation in the Bible for...
Would you like me to move that pillow? I think it's
Okay.
giving you some trouble.
Is this okay?
That's fine. I just think the pillow might be in your way.
Yeah, in my way since...
Yeah,
it was there for Vera Mae, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was there for Vera Mae.
This way you
Yeah,
can
it was
sit
there.
more comfortably.
Yeah.
Okay.
Love is the love in terms of the incarnation of God to know us and to love us the motivation for that is love. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son.
Yes.
The longest text in the Bible, I think, is a text about the incarnation of God and the complication and all of that in the Bible. So I began to preach like that, and then I ended up where I'm at. I started teaching in the community. Boys within the community. I joined the church, and I went to a Bible training program. It was official but unofficial. You learn it, but you didn't get no degree for it. You graduated, but you graduated for the community, not did they even know that you were a teacher. So there was no thing to go with it. And I went there for 3 years. And when
Was
I
this
left,
before you came back to Mississippi?
no, that was in California.
In California.
In
okay.
California. And when I left the last 3 years I went there, when I left, I was a commencement speaker. And then I left there then, and I went to a prison. And when I went to a prison, I'm teaching. I'm doing this all the time. And then I went to a prison. The businessmen, I become a part of a businessmen's committee. First black person that ever been a part of that businessmen committee, and they loved me like I had never been loved before. Now, all that was timing. Here was these businessmen going to prison, working with businessmen, going to jail, working with black people mostly. Now, these successful businessmen. And in Southern California, it's a section there where they have these farms, rural farms for prisons, and in the mountains where they control those fires and stuff like that. And so they invited me to go to, somebody had started a Sunday morning early Bible class in the prison, juvenile prison. This is my calling. This is when I really felt called to be a Bible teacher. I mean, I wanted to be it. And all of this is going on at the same time. I'm talking about. I talk about my upbringing in Mississippi to those kids and how I had come to faith, just like I told you. And as I was doing it, it's about 25, 30, 40, and most of them, might have been 45, I would say 30% of that 40 was black in there. And it was young kids. I'm now 27, 28, 27 years old, okay? And when I told them how I came to faith by reading this Bible verse that put everything together in my life, I said, I discovered my need for God. And then I read this verse where it said, I have been crucified with Christ. Nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ lives in me. And the life that I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith and the grace of the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. And when I finished, when I got ready to finish, two boys in the back were just weeping. And they were weeping, so it was, why would they be weeping? And I'm teaching like this. And I went back there, and they almost said in concert, I told them my story in life about being poor and all that. And they said, like, our life was just like yours. And I like what they were saying to me, not all them words. How could I be like you? Well, that meant I'm gonna have to teach him. I mean, I have to teach him. The lady told me about the Bible, and I told her, and I found that love of God and the love for other people. And then my job, I loved it so much. I'm a young black thinking I'm a big shot
Well, you were a veteran.
at this age, and I love my job, love my family. My kids are being developed, but looking at those kids' face, and I guess my life went through me, and you do begin to worry, because I know I wanted meaning, and meaning to me then was a nice house I had, a big house I had a new car. That didn't bring that meaning. I enjoyed it, but then I couldn't rest until I came back to Mississippi, and that has been my life. Now we're gonna finish up here, but I've been around the world. I've been to all the continents, the major cities of the world, and created an organization called the Christian Community Development Association. Have you heard about that one?
I don't think so.
It's scattered all over the world. So now I'm here in 91. So that's my Christian story. I'm gonna get you these two books. You got another question? I can answer a question.
I do.
Yeah.
A tickle in the throat. Sorry. I do just have a couple more questions. I know you've spoken about this a great many times, but when you returned to Mississippi, you were arrested, were you not?
I was back in Mississippi for 10 years before I was arrested.
Right.
Doing all kind of things, but
And that was the 1960s.
1960. I came back in 1960.
Right.
I was arrested in 1970.
Okay.
In fact, I was arrested the first time in 1969 in December. The second time I was arrested was February the 12th. It's February the 7th in 1970, 69, 70. And so I had been back to Mississippi that time for 10 years. And that had come out of the whole civil rights movement. I couldn't separate hunger and poverty. I couldn't separate beating up people in the prison. I couldn't, and voting. I couldn't separate that from my faith. And white folks separated that for black folk, but they didn't for themselves. You didn't hear what I said. You didn't hear what I said.
You said white folks and black folks separated that.
Both, let me tell you how it worked. Once you became a Christian, you're not supposed to like them so much that you want to help them to get a good job. You want to help them to make more money. You want to help them to go to the school you need to go to. All of that is injustice. But they don't teach black folks that's injustice because the white folks don't set that system up. But they have created spent a lot of money to put you in jail if you don't. They then put up a lot of signs for you to know where to go. And now, if I start telling people those signs are wrong, I'm a bad nigger. Now, the one thing about it, so now I think this is I ain't never felt like I need to be like that. Now, see, some people get socialized into that, and they got educated into that. My education was with the reality of the people. I didn't think those boys back there was crazy, them little black boys. I wouldn't have thought those white boys was crazy. I thought that misfortune done hit up on them. You know, right? They profile us and make sure that we get arrested. That's what's going on now.
Is that why you were arrested?
No, I was there because of me fighting against that kind of foolishness.
Right.
And it wasn't that much fighting against it. Is that I thought we ought to do something about it. That's a little different. It's a little different. You wouldn't have made it through whatever school you went through, girl, if you would have hated all of those white teachers or hated all those black teachers or whatever one, and you're going to hate one because of his color. You couldn't have made it there.
You're right.
Because those problems would have become real. And you got mad with it. It is that kind of faith we got to come up with. We got to come up with a faith and love that is coming, flowing from your humanity, flowing from human dignity, flowing from a commitment to help somebody. And it's flowing from meaning. You know, I love my house. I love my car. I love my children. I love them. But boy, this humanity is what all this is about.
Love thy neighbor.
Huh?
Love thy neighbor.
That's right. As yourself.
Yeah.
As yourself. But if your neighbor is black, I didn't mean that. I mean, if it's white,
Yeah.
you know, other color, it is that is what people need to know, and that has been my life journey. I've tried to be a good Christian as I can be. I realize I'm broken though. I think that's important. I realize that we all is broken. I can't do what I want to do all the time. Man, that's one of my greatest agonies, that I find problems I can't solve. I think I now have sort of pushed them to believe that God has got a solution. But that I haven't found it, and other folks haven't found the solution. And I think a guy named Francis Schaeffer wrote his manifesto. He became a scholar, and then he did like I did too, a little bit. He committed himself to teaching others in Switzerland when he got to be famous, and he bought some property there, and he wanted to just have people to come from all over the world, and he would teach them. And I sort of have taken that kind of position, but in another way. I do it more with individuals and with adults now. You know, I started off with children. I didn't tell you about what I did. For the first 9 years of my work, I went into 15 in all, public schools within the 5 or 6 counties I lived in, for men and all. It didn't come up to Jackson. I would come to Jackson every once in a while and teach in a class in a school because they'd hear about me. but I was in the rural area. That's where I was from, rural. I spent my first 10 years, my first 9 years, you might say, doing that. And I thought I'd be doing that somewhat the rest of my life. But then, as I began to do that, opportunities began to develop, and I began to see what I could do about it. And so I came up with an organization called the Voice of Carry. It's still going, but it started in Mendenhall. And then I developed, went to California and developed a center there. And then came back to work with my son, and he died. And that's what, 20 years ago. And he had started this ministry, and I built on it because I wanted to do something in remembrance of him. And so now I'm finishing up.
Yes.
Finishing up here. Yeah. You did I answer your question altogether? I forget to carry it through sometimes.
You did. I just wanted to hear a little bit more about the incident with the officers that kind of.
Oh, they beat me up?
Yeah, and it changed the way you thought about love, right? Like
What happened to me when I was being beaten? Here's what the story would say. I was shocked. I knew the possibility, but I was shocked at the severity of it and the anger of it. The anger was beyond description. They were only restraining themselves from killing me. And if they killed me in that jail with 19 other Tupelo students and 3 other people, I think they thought of the consequences of that. And if I would have died, it would have made no difference. You know, they'd have been glad if I would have died after that. That's why it was so severe. And in that beating me, at first I was shocked. And then when somebody hits you and kick you and you can't hit them back, that's hard. And it's harder if you believe you're good as them. Because if you think you're good as them, you think, well, you might win. You're gonna get killed. With 6 of them, you're gonna get killed. Like Floyd. They're gonna see you get killed. So when it beat me and the phone rang and all of that, and my blood was all over the floor, they took a fork, tried to stick it up your nose, tried to stick it down your throat. You got a pistol and play Russian roulette with it. Put a bullet in it and spin it, pull the trigger. Lord have mercy. I saw evil. I saw evil beyond the human way of seeing evil. I saw hate for what it was. And I thought about a solution for me. If I had an atomic hand grenade, I'd pull the plug and we'd all die together. That's when I saw I was just as evil as them. The 2 little kids would have been killed too. We all have been killed together. The kids who came to help me. That's when I said, God, I want you to forgive me for that evil thought. And if I could get out of this jail. Now, I know I was bargaining with God. I know I'm a bargainer. I know I'm a salesman. I was trying to bribe God. I said, God, if you let me get out of this jail, I want to preach a gospel that can save us together. I want to preach a gospel that has some brotherhood in it. And God used that pain, He used that recovery. He used all of that to help me do a little of that. And if you keep on doing a little of it, it accumulates.
And it passes down.
Huh?
It passes down
Yeah,
in the generations.
yeah. And I think some of my suffering now, you find it in these books, some of my suffering now is, I don't know, I think suffering can become a discipler to help fulfill God's purpose for you in life. I'm thinking as I say this. I'm looking at what's happening to me. I think God has a purpose for all our life. I think He has a plan for us. And He wants us to get in it. And that He creates the discipline that pushes us along. And I think if it has to do with human behavior, see, human behavior is cruel. We like to hurt each other. We like to hurt each other. We get on our pursuit and we hate each other too. I mean, because some of our ideas is killing each other for some dope, killing each other for my mama didn't give me my welfare check. You know, some of these children, the way they give you welfare, they say it's your money. Are you following me? Mm-hmm. Mama, you get this much money for me. Mm-hmm. This is my money. And you spend it all on somebody else. And you give it to this old nigga who comes in here and sleep with his mama. Children don't like for, boys don't like for another man to sleep in his mother's bed. You've heard that?
Sure.
You've heard that in psychology, haven't you? They don't teach that in psychology.
Well, I'm not a psychologist, but I've heard of the Oedipus complex.
Yeah.
That's what they call it, I think.
Yeah. And that's happening now and you can't talk about it. You can't talk about it. Girls sleeping with girls. Now, I ain't making that a big booger man. You know, I'm man that the sexuality was meant to be a place of compassionate love. You know, and somewhat control of. You court. Eventually you get married. You know what? You know what I'm talking about. But when you see it,
it's different
abused.
kinds of love. Yeah.
Get abused. And so how do you relate these kind of truths? We have kids here. It's big. Kids, confused.
There's a lot of confusion in the world today.
A lot of confusion in life. And so that's in this. I'm afraid I'm afraid for Mississippi. I'm afraid for America. We are the richest nation that ever been thought of in the history of the world.
And yet people are still living in poverty.
Yeah. And we have the ability, two of the richest men in the world did a trick that looked like it would have been human impossible just a few weeks ago.
You're talking about the space flight?
Yeah, Brian and going to spoon. That's and they did it really for the expansion of human knowledge.
Or ego.
Oh, of course. Egos are big things. I'm telling you about mine. I know I got too big an ego. I got too big an ego. I have to think of ways even when I'm talking to control my
I think you've done a very good job.
control your ego. But see, you know what? The word is humility. That's a control word. And well, the control, the bigger word then would be humility. Did I say humility?
Yeah.
That comes from the word humbling. That's coming from the idea that you can do it, but I shouldn't overbrag on myself. The night that Jesus had to die, God had to humble him. Though he was God, yet he learned humility by the things that he suffered in that Garden of Gethsemane. So you got to control your humility and give it to God. And God will help you too, because when I'm teaching, sometimes I start telling a story of something. You might find that I keep telling you a part of the story, but I will take some of the drama out of it. Because the drama can be fascination with yourself.
I understand.
And if we need God to, I think people will get the message, because you will say it again. You know, that would be in your, you missed something. You missed something.
Yes.
And what you're trying to do then, what conscious now is saying, it done took me a little bit on myself, and I go somewhere else with it. You know, I don't think I even finished with those people that beat me up. I think it went to what I could do. Is there something I could do? And that's another important thing. That's God.
Yeah.
Because you're taking responsibility. When I talk to people about sin, they'll start talking to me about somebody else. I said, I have more trouble with my own sin than I do with anybody else's. I have more trouble with my own sin than I do with anybody else. So why should I spend all my time here talking about your sin? Mine is killing me.
Oh dear.
You know, it's good for me. It's good for you. You know? It's good for you. No, I mean that they have some objective.
Yes.
That's what I mean. I mean,
To have
talking
some
about
objective.
you want to be sober. You want to be able to teach your children tomorrow at school. You know what I mean? You want to be real, but you don't want to go out feeling that you're so much superior.
Right. God can't forgive you if you don't accept that you're a sinner. There can be no forgiveness. if there's
You
no
are pretty
sin.
smart. Where do you go to church?
I've been to quite a few churches in my life, but right now I go to Word of Life Church in
Where's
Flowood.
that?
In Flowood.
Who passed it?
Pastor Joel Sims.
Yeah, that would be near. I don't know if ever preached it. I know them, and these are the kind of people. Pine Lake, you know Pine Lake?
I don't know.
Pine Lake, they are the largest church in the state.
Okay.
But their headquarters is over there, out that road that goes all the way up to somewhere in Rankin County.
Oh, is it Lakeland?
Huh?
Lakeland?
Lakeland.
Yeah.
They go out Lakeland there,
Yeah.
out there, and they got probably 2 other campuses here in Jackson.
Okay.
And then they got one in Oxford. They might have one in the Mississippi State.
Okay.
Yeah, they are there.
I'll look into that.
Huh?
That church, I'll look into.
Yeah, his name is Henderson.
Okay.
Henderson is church is the one that came to me and said they wanted to honor me for my work.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon is where I was beaten up at.
And yes, I know. That's where I live in Brandon.
Okay.
Everyone has warned me about Brandon.
Well, it's okay.
I think it's better now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No doubt about that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they came to talk to me. You don't put this in there. If you could, I wouldn't say put this in the book.
Well, I can turn off the camera.
No, I'm saying. Yeah, I'm not gonna send that bad. They came to me and said, "We want to honor you," and I said, and they told me what it was. Somebody wanted to give a couple $100,000 to so Vera and I could have a sort of a decent life at the end of my life. And I said, I thought about it. I said, you know, Vera and I can get through. Why don't we do something significant with it? And so we started thinking about it. And we did something. I said, let's give it to Jackson State and create an endowment that other folks can give money to it. We haven't played it much. I'm gonna give them, they'll play on it more when I'm gone. You know, and my daughters are gonna work with them if they can. And you know how that worked. Somebody gave us 200. The government has a program where they match that with 200. So we got 400,000 there, and others will be giving money to it, and we're gonna give the interest on the money to build endowment.
Right.
So that's the goal. So I'd like to see that grow. I would like to do one for Tuvalu. I did that one more in relationship to those Jackson State student that was killed. And I mean, that's all in my mind.
The Gibbs Green?
Huh?
You said the Jackson State students that were killed. Are you talking about Philip Gibbs and James Earl Green?
Yeah. You know the story you don't know.
I do know that story.
Let me tell you another story.
Okay.
They shot up the girl's dorm.
Right.
Did you know Connie Slaughter was my lawyer?
Connie Slaughter was your lawyer.
That defended me the night that they shot up the school. My lawyer, Connie Slaughter, who was suing Brandon and everybody else around for beating us up in jail. That was the night she interrogated the inspector, Goon Jones, and he led the shooting up the there. So he was responding to that little black nigger girl, asking him. She was a lawyer, and she was just out of law school. Interrogating him. He was mad with these Negroes. He was mad with those girls.
You think?
Now, these boys were shot in that incident.
Uh-huh.
So that's why I was trying to make a decision on what would be the greatest thing since the money came from Brandon, a church in Brandon, and I was in Brandon, and I would create this fund instead of me taking the money. Let's do something more with it. Let's use it. Now, you know, that's one of the things that I do, is that we've got scholarships, but most of these are Christian college. One family has 25 scholarships in my name.
Wow.
Others have scholarship. So what I'm trying to do, someday they're gonna make it famous, but I don't, not famous, gonna make it known. I don't want, I'm trying to low key as long as I'm living. Because the schools will say, why not the other school? Why not this? Why you didn't do this with it? Wasn't that something that, endow a school like Jackson State, it's almost like Tougaloo, it's almost like, sort of like one of the best things you could do. The money stays there if you can get enough of it. And the reason Harvard is so great, the reason your school is so great, look at the endowment.
Yes.
You
It's a
got
lot of money.
You got the endowment. So, and we don't, you can plan programs. So if Jackson State had, what are y'all, about 1,000 students?
I suppose.
So in there, so if we have 1,000 endowed scholars, we could do some stuff.
Yes.
You could do some stuff. You could do some stuff. So that's what I'm trying to do. I have a friend called me yesterday. This is amazing. He had a brother. He and his brother went together. They're Christian, and they did some marvelous stuff in the world. He became a billionaire, and he and his brother, and he just sold his house. He died of cancer. He buried his wife 2 weeks ago, and he created a foundation, then turned it over to the family. With I don't know how many $100,000, $1 million in it, it perpetuates itself. And he called me yesterday. He was going to give some money to our organization. He sold his house, and he got cancer. He died of cancer, and he done took all the medicine off, and he's taking the money. And I'm going through a little of that now. I'm going through a little of trying to see how much Vera Mae and I, we got a little family trust, a small one, but we trying to go through now. We got our grandchildren, my great grandchildren. We got them a little growth fund. So you're gonna die.
We all do.
You can't take it with you. It's hard. But even that's hard too. I mean that when I say that's hard, that's creative thinking, and that's trying to. Jackson State got a good. We want to have a little input on the student, but we don't want to say who gets it. But it's designed for blacks.
Right.
You get the idea. It's
Yes.
designed for that. But
Because of Gibbs and Green.
Pardon me?
Because of Gibbs and Green. There were 2 black boys that died.
Right. Yeah, that's why we want to do it. And we want to enrich that section of it. That section of it. That means it's going to be a black university for a long time to come. And so it could keep on doing that. And the idea would be, we talked about that, so when we're gone, they'll talk about it a little bit more. You see, they usually have a fundraising. I used to go to the fundraiser. I had a friend who gave money every year, and they have honored me over there with it at that deal for some of the other stuff I've been doing. So how do we do that? That's the reason I would take this engagement for that purpose a little bit, and for you scholarly people trying to make history as real as you can make it. But I'm still worried about the governors and people won't tell people to go by the rules and all of that.
Like wearing a mask?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and these kind of things. All of that is darkness.
It's very scary.
It is scary. It is scary. And if I had a Hanksman newt out of that yard and they find it, I can go to jail.
Mm.
But you can take it in the Capitol and say, we're coming in here to hang the vice president, and it's constitutional. Isn't that sad?
Yes, sir.
Isn't that, and they're gonna have a program to do something for voting or something like that because of Floyd and all that.
Mm. You mean
They
George
make a
Floyd?
filibuster deal to shut the whole thing down. Ain't got nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
They tied the bill to filibuster.
Mm-hmm. To stop progress.
Yeah, kill the progress. About something unrelated.
Yeah.
And everybody, we can't change that. Oh, Lord. I'm afraid for our nation.
Me too.
I'm afraid for our nation. I'm afraid. And look at the Taliban, what they've done. And poor women are going to have a Lord have mercy. It's going to stop. There was a little progress being made in Saudi Arabia and these other places. You know, they began to make some progress with women. And they're going to set them back.
Well, I think we've been
Okay.
going for quite some time,
Okay.
and
Well,
I'm sure you have to eat as well.
you gonna come back near or gonna wait till you do something with this? How you
I'm
gonna
probably
do it?
gonna wait until I can get this transcribed and see if we have any more questions we need to talk about. I think you answered all of my questions.
Okay. So yeah, so I'm willing to do it with you again
Okay.
if you want to. If you don't have to and satisfied, be satisfied.
Yes.
but if you do say that that's a little stuff we can, I want you to know that I don't mind doing it.